Okay, it's late afternoon. Everybody want to go get their beer. They want to go to the fake beach, feel the real rain. But what I'm going to talk about is incredibly interesting and very new. So I hope I got your attentions. Well, who am I? I'm a movie buff. This is my first VHS collection, as you can see. And my VHS collection grew pretty fast together with my frustration. It became a huge DVD collection that I couldn't really make to another Blu-ray collection. It was way too expensive. My actual used them, and some examples where Netflix and the big organizations have used them. So we all know data is incredibly important. If you look at Facebook, YouTube, these guys have data-driven cultures. They start with creating products driven by data. So they are becoming broadcasters faster than we think. They're coming into our industry way faster than we think. So with YouTube getting linear rights and Facebook creating their own originals, these are actual threats we should think about when we have organizations that started out with incredible good premium content, but not so data-driven cultures. Now, we are well known with Netflix and how they've been utilizing data for a long time. A lot of PR things around House of Cards. But one of the bigger points that I think very few people have been talking about is Adam Sandler. He got 4 exclusive movie deals with Netflix. This is incredibly disruptive if you think about it. Hollywood have never done this before. They have never signed a single actor up to 4 contracts just like that. And before he had released his first 2 movies, they actually gave him 4 more movie deals. That's 8 exclusive movie deals within 1 year with 1 actor, driven by 1 single data point. We have watched 500 million hours of Adam Sandler. It's incredibly sad. We all know that this is something that is not good for the future, but if we look at this data point is incredibly driven. It drove Netflix to make a huge decision that cost them millions and millions of dollars very, very quickly and accurately by just looking at this. But Netflix have not just been measuring this kind of data. They've been measuring actually colors that we've been exposed to for the last couple of years. Whatever we clicked, they measured what colors we clicked on. What we're looking at here is more specifically how they've been A/B testing to different background colors for Orange the New Black. And obviously the gray background had a better click ratio than the white background. For season 2, they optimized it to the gray background. They raised the click ratio with 15 to 20% for not just Orange the New Black, for actually all the TV shows around Orange the New Black. The whole library suddenly looked much more appealing to the viewer that was watching it. Now, they've been using machine learning and computer vision to do a lot of incredible stuff. Machines can't really be creative, right? Humans are the creative parts, but we can use machines to scale our creativity. A lot of people work with metadata in bulk. They buy them all at once from one company and just push out all the posters. Netflix, they look at the data, they see what shows are mostly important, their originals, their own shows, of course. They start working with that metadata more and more specifically. They start pushing specific images to specific demographics, and they also use computer vision to identify where the faces of the characters are, where the bodies of the characters are in the images, to then automatically place out their logos, their own logo and the TV show's logo. This is how they use machine learning to scale the creative process in a bigger scale. Now, we at Vionlabs, we think very, very differently. So what we have done is that we have done something incredibly unique. We have created something we call vinyl fingerprints. What I'm just going to show you now is how our computers perceive the content that we watch. And what we've done is that we looked at data points that emotionally affects you. Data points that we know affects you either becoming stressed or happy or laughing or whatever. I mean, a director don't really choose a color into a movie or into a scene by chance. Every single color, the music, the movement, everything in the image is important for you to affect you emotionally. What you're just going to see now in the next slide that I show you is that you're going to see a fingerprint. The fingerprint is going to contain scenes. Each tile you're going to see is an actual scene from the movie. The colors in the scene is going to be inside the tile. The width of the tile shows how long the scene is, and how fast it moves up and down actually shows the intensity of the action in that scene. Now, if we look at these two James Bond movies, From Russia with Love versus Spectra, the whole industry is today built by meta tags, right? Meta tags and metadata created either by a human being or a computer. These meta tags are usually something like James Bond, spy car, or something ridiculous like machine gun or AK-47. What you're looking at here is that you can actually see that this first James Bond movie started with these incredible action scenes. All the new James Bond movies does that. They talk to a very impatient 15-year-old, which is their new target groups and new youth people. These movies start with action, they have a little bit of talk, then you have action, and then you have a little bit of talk, and you have action, and you have a little bit of talk, and you have action. By the end of the movie, basically everything in the movie explodes. The old school movies, which I like, I'm a much more Sean Connery type of James Bond person. I mean, there's a much slower, as you can see. The cuts are much thinner. The movie's pace is about telling the story, the scenography, getting you to know all these characters like James Bond and Moneypenny. The new Bond movies, I have no relationship to the new characters in there. That's what I call basically Michael Bay certified movies. These movies are 100% okay by Michael Bay. Blow everything up and as much nudity as possible, and he's very happy. Now, colors are incredibly important. This is nothing that we measure by chance. If you look at colors, they're part of the storytelling. In the show Defenders, they have a very hard time getting you into 4 different shows at once. They're binding together the whole universe. The way they done that, Netflix, to be able to get you to understand the story very easily, is that they use colors. Each character, each environment that these characters are from have different scenes. Luke Cage in Harlem have this incredibly strong yellow. Daredevil in Hell's Kitchen has this red following him no matter where he is in his scenes. And we have Jessica Jones with the cold blue and Iron Fist with the green. The villain in the show, Alexandra, has this cold white showing this calm environment around her that she has control. That's how kind of character she is. Now, this is used actually in the storytelling for us to understand where we are, in what environment, at what kind of heroes, in what hero's world we are in. We have Misty here from the TV show Luke Cage. Misty is the one that kind of binds together in the first episode the different kind of shows together. We can see that when Misty moves from Luke Cage environment into Jessica Jones environment, it goes from that yellow to that strong blue. It was really interesting when Daredevil steps into the room here, and we can see how the strong red background color is showing that this is Daredevil's world, but he's right now visiting Jessica Jones's world. He's in her environment, helping us to understand the story way better. And by the end of when they all meet by episode 4, we can see how these colors are getting all of them combined in the restaurant scene, that is. I'm warning you guys for some minor spoilers, but there's not any big spoilers here. In the restaurant scene, we can see behind each character, they have the strong colors exposed behind them, showing them their characteristics. Looking at the fingerprint and the color schedule, this is the timeline of the full episode. This is the beginning and this is the end of it. And this is the top 10 colors of that episode. We can see episode 1, 2, and 3 having very similar colors telling the stories of all 4 characters one-on-one. But when it goes to episode 4, the colors just explodes. You can see all those colors coming together in that episode, showing kind of these heroes coming together. In the TV show Game of Thrones, winter is coming. By each season as it goes, it's getting colder and colder and darker, helping us understand that the threat from north is coming, and it's coming fast. These are tools that the directors have been using for many, many generations to help us understand their stories without needing to put too much effort to it. Season 7, episode 7, it's a spoiler, it's also Michael Bay certified. Lots of explosions, lots of fire. Now, where's the difference between what we do and many other people do? Is that if you look at the video intelligence tools out there, what Google have been doing, or Amazon, or anybody else, or IBM, is that they've been data mining videos for meta tags. They've been basically looking at the content, creating meta tags that are talking about what is in the actual image. But that is not what the director is communicating. The director is using the video, the audio, and the text, and the dialogue to communicate some kind of a feeling. He wants you to be stressed. He wants you to feel sympathy. He wants you to feel joy. And he has recipes to do this. And we have reverse engineered this and help the whole industry kind of categorize their users into different fan bases, or as Netflix calling them, taste communities. Now, these are 4 different examples of taste communities, but there's, of course, thousands of them out there. The reason I chose these 4 to show them is that, first of all, they're based on real data, but also because we could actually affect one of these groups to start engaging much more in the service. Looking at the data here, we can see that we have the intrigue devoters, people that love drama. What is interesting with that group is that if the content gets above certain speed, they actually turn off the stream and change the stream to something else, if it gets too stressful, if the action level is too high. If we look at the thrill seekers, you can see that the thrill seekers are basically people that watch a lot of mainstream, I would say colorful, fast-paced content, a lot of Michael Bay adventure movies, this type of stuff. If we look at the generalists, these are people that basically watch a lot of, I would say, Sundance Festival content, a lot of festival movies. I usually joke around that these are people that hate laughing. They avoid anything with comedy. They're very picky. They want 7 to 8 in IMDb rating. And then we have the violence junkies, the most interesting group. There was a group of people that declined very, very quickly, but they used to be 20% of the user base. And we were able to figure out why they left. So what we did is that we identified, this is basically you're looking at the data in the background, what is going on behind the scenes, is that we could identify that the violence junkies, of course, as you can see I'm showing here, are watching way more horror movie than anybody else. The red line is the average user, and the blue line is basically all the horror movie lovers, the violence junkies. Now, going further, what was really, really interesting is that they didn't mind watching older content from 2009 and earlier. Now, horror movies are cheap to distribute, they're cheap to produce and buy. Here I have a bunch of people that are 20% of my user base and they love horror. But if I look at the library, there's only 134 horror movies and then 608 drama movies, making it very obvious why the drama lovers are there and the horror movie lovers are kind of disappearing. But we didn't just want to tell our partners, go buy a bunch of horror movies and all your problems are over. We wanted to show more and more specifically what the different groups, how they acted when it comes to action level, content speed, as I'm showing there, the different taste communities, the conversation level. We can see the people that watch drama have way more higher conversation level than people that watch horror. Same thing with audio emotional energies, like how stressful the music it is, audio emotional dominance, and how much bass there is in it, in the sound and music. But one of the most interesting things is looking at content colorfulness. The specific group, violence junkies, they start watching pretty colorful content by the beginning of the year, but as the year goes and it becomes darker and darker in Sweden, the users start watching darker and darker content. This is actually connected to the weather. So we had to look at it, is there a connection or not? Is there a connection or not? Obviously not. What happened with the presentation? There we go. So we did a clear connection. We connected the user behavior data to the weather data. And we could see some very obvious stuff, like horror movies, you didn't watch them until it was dark outside. But some very non-obvious stuff. Like the movie Noah had 6,933 views in 6 months, but not once, not even the guy uploading it to the service to try if the stream was working or the video were working, did watch this movie when the sun is shining outside. Only when it's rainy or cloudy. Showing a clear data that darker movies went way better during cloudy days and rainy days. And one of the things I truly, truly despise is when people start pushing me a lot of romantic comedies during Valentine's Day. Or if they start pushing me a bunch of Christmas movies during Christmas or the Oscars movies during the Oscar Academy Awards. I mean, we're basically assuming that everybody wants the same thing. But if you look at the data, if you look at each person, they actually act differently. In this case, we can see that romantic movies have only 11% increase during Valentine's Day. And that is probably because we pushed them on the start page. If we didn't push them on the start page, they wouldn't even have that increase, I would guess. While thrillers and horror movies that are not pushed on the start page during Valentine's Day has an increase of 28%, meaning that a lot of the users are actually finding those type of contents to make sure they watch them. So we should never assume what our viewers want. We should actually look at the data and let the data help us to make those decisions. Very, very typically is that you invest in a lot of AAA content like Gravity, Transformers, and Lucy. But if you don't package your data good enough, it's a very hard time to actually make good decision out of it. In this case, we can see that these are AAA content that they push on the start page, have a huge amount of views, way more than other contents. But we usually don't have this data point showing us the completion ratio. Gravity have 23,000 views, but only 60% of the movie in average is finished watching. I would say that Gravity by itself gives you this feeling that it's a very intensive, maybe sci-fi movie if you look at the poster. But I don't know if you guys have seen Gravity, but it's a very, very slow movie. It's basically a monologue by 2 hours with Sandra Bullock by herself in space. I actually like that movie a lot, but not everyone likes it. Now, if you look at the peak that Gravity and Transformers have, is that they have a huge peak as long as they're on the start page. As soon as we remove them, they just hit the ground. You guys remember the violence junkies I talked about? If you look at the horror movie lovers, if you look at horror movies in general, it's actually increasing slowly and slowly, ending up above Gravity and Transformers. The movie Gift is an independent, low-budget movie made. Now, this movie actually hit both above Transformers and Gravity. That is way more expensive to make. So if we can look at the data, we can stop assuming, and we can actually start acting the way that our viewers are expecting us. Where one of the, I would say, general problems I see in the industry is that we buy this AAA content, we create this peak, we got all the users in, like Game of Thrones, but while the users are in, we don't really know how to capture them and keep them in the service. So we have this peak coming up as Game of Thrones gets launched before the season premiere, or as the season premiere starts. But what happens when the season premiere goes away? I don't have the data now because it ends in September. It just recently ended. This is for season 7. But I bet you, if you look at your own data and our data, you can see that this will hit the ground very, very soon again. So how do we capture these viewers? We can see that our viewers are watching Mondays, 9 o'clock, of course, when the episodes have premieres. So how do we continuously keep them from Tuesday to Sunday and keep their attention? Well, we understand what they're looking at before the season premiere. One of the interesting things to see is that 62% of the people watching Game of Thrones actually watch Silicon Valley before Game of Thrones premiere starts. I can relate to that as a tech geek, as a general geek. I love both tech and Dungeons and Dragons and Lord of the Rings and all of this. But also interesting to see that there's other types of content that's similar to Game of Thrones when it comes to they're both very dark. They have the same relationship conflicts when it comes to humans and so on. And also a lot of other typical TV shows that is incredibly important to understand what people watch before the season premiere and after it. When we have this data, when we understand our content and users very, very well, that's when we can actually start doing personalization. That's when we can go into discovery. A lot of people are starting with step number 5 here. They try to utilize their data to basically go into recommendations without understanding their content truly or the users. You have to start with step number 1 and work yourself to step number 5 to make sure to have a good impact. Gather your data, no matter if it's meta tags that I talked about or fingerprints that we have. Make sure you gather it in one place and you have a high quality data set to work with. Structure it, make sure that people can use it and make it accessible. Visualize that data so anybody in the organization can access it and utilize it to either improve their communications or the actual personalization or the product and so on. When you have done all those steps, that's when you can, as I mentioned, truly go into personalization and create recommendations that are based after a household behaves. What we're looking at here is the watch history of a specific user, where we have on the left side is the beginning of the day, and the right side is basically what they end up their day with watching. We can see this specific family have kids. They have somebody that watches a lot of reality TV shows from Discovery Channel, but they also have somebody that likes a lot of horror, vampire TV shows, and so on. And this is helping us bridge users from linear TV over to SVOD services and TVOD services, utilizing the data that we have. And together, we have more data than Netflix and Facebook and Google and YouTube bind together. If you look at your logs, if you look at your data sets you have at your offices today, I bet you have more data than Netflix have when it comes to broadcasters and linear TV users. So it's not an excuse that you don't have the data. it's excused that you're not actually utilizing your data right now. Now, what you can do is also you can take personalization out of the service. A lot of people are thinking that personalization is just about the start page. But you want to be able to communicate with people that are either hibernating but still paying for your services, or approach people with a low activity that you can't approach on your start page because they're outside your service. So you take the same data that you have, that I just showed you, and you can actually, with this type of tools, this type of technology that we have done, filter them out by activity level. You choose either users that are hibernating or having a normal activity, and you can export them as either an API or a CSV file with the user IDs together with their favorite content IDs, and taking that to personal newsletters or a personal text message that you're going to send them, and other interesting tools that are available outside. Now, what we also have been able to do is that together with the data that I showed you, we can create incredible predictions. With a 95% accuracy, we can actually predict that a user is leaving the service or going into hibernation state in good time before they do. And that is, as I see it, the best way to approach personalization. That's all I had to say. Thank you so much.